Yeah, this was a tough report. Certainly, I kind of will refer to it a little bit as maybe this was the October surprise that everyone was always waiting for. But we know that many of these job cuts, that are happening, a lot of it came from the impacts of the hurricane and the strikes. However, most of the job growth, and we've discussed this before on your program, most of the job growth is really coming from the government sector and the healthcare sector. So if you look at this private number, we actually lost jobs. If you back out the government gain of 40,000, we would have lost jobs. The private sector would have lost 28,000. So this is a concerning report, even with the hurricane and even with the strikes. Across the board, many of the sectors are really losing jobs, and especially that manufacturing number had a loss of, I believe, 46,000 jobs. And then the sector that I'm in, the temporary help sector, lost almost 50,000 jobs. And so that is concerning as well. You can see that companies are still very cautious to hire, and they're letting their temporary workers, go first as they try to hold on to their permanent payrolls and permanent employees.
I mean, we're just under a week away from the next Fed meeting. And of course, this is going to be some data that the Federal Reserve will be parsing. How should we be thinking about this in the context of the rate cut environment and what trajectory could look like at this next meeting and beyond?
Well, I do think the Fed will really dig into this report because it's not just the October numbers that look so soft, but they also went back and revised the prior 2 months downward and took another 112,000 jobs out of the job market. So I think the Fed will be looking at this report and saying, the job market is not as strong as maybe we thought it was. And we are starting to see, even though wages are still up, I can tell you wages are starting to soften. They're certainly not keeping up, with inflationary costs. So I do believe that the Fed will look at this report and look at these numbers and what's happening with unemployment, the participation rate, where the job growth is coming from, and realize that this is a bit of a challenging job market. And in other reports too, we are seeing increase in layoffs in many sectors. I know the Challenger and Gray report came out and again showed that layoffs continue to happen. So there are certainly some concerns out there in this job market.
Joanie, just 30 seconds left here. The wage inflation, or the wage 4%, seems pretty solid to me, but you see a little bit of concern out there?
I do. I think employers have, been increasing wages really for quite a few years. And at this point, with where the job market is, I think that that's going to just flatten off. That's what we're hearing from employers, large employers, mid-sized employers. They're really watching their
Yep.
labor costs, and they're having to be more conservative.